What's up, everybody? Welcome to a brand new episode of Part of the Problem. I am Dave Smith. I am, of course, joined by, of course. Oh, dude, I did that old, but you know that old accent that's completely gone away? You know, like the old-timey thing where it's like, it was the worst snow on Christmas.
Okay, like the old voiceover voice.
Yeah, it's what I remember. Literally, what I'm doing it from is Frosty the Snowman, the movie.
Frosty.
My daughter's
I don't know that I've ever seen
fan. It's but that's how it starts. He goes, "It was the first snow of Christmas," and you're like, "Oh, what? Remember when men used to talk like that? And we didn't take no guff from no one." Anyway, we're back from Nashville. Robbie the Fire Bernstein is with me. How are you, sir?
Nashville was a blast. Cool club.
Nashville was great. We had done we loved the Zanies in Chicago and Rosemont and stuff, and then everybody had always been saying you got to go down to the one in Nashville, and they were not wrong. It was a good time had by all, and thank you to everybody who came out. We sold out all the shows down there, so that was fun. And doing the Bitcoin conference was interesting too. So anyway, I enjoyed that very much.
And I'm porching this weekend, so if you're out in California, Santa Barbara Friday night, Saturday in Agawanga, which is a little bit north of San Diego, and then Hawthorne, California on Sunday. Come hang out.
Very good, very good. And I will be I'm out at the Young Americans for Liberty, their big event down in Orlando.
Fancy lineup. I saw the card.
Yeah, Ron Paul, the great Ron Paul, is coming to speak there. I will be speaking on. I think I'm keynoting on Friday night, I believe. So if anybody is there, I think the thing's already sold out, but I'm not 100% sure, to be honest. But they always fill that up, and it's always a good time. And then we got a lot more stuff coming up. We will be back at the end of August. We'll be back in Fort Worth and Dallas at Hyenas. We had a great time out there last year, so really looking forward to doing those again. Stamford, Connecticut, Casper, Wyoming, Oklahoma City, Tulsa, Oklahoma, Detroit, Kansas City, Philadelphia. We got a lot of dates coming up. ComicDaveSmith.com. Go over there for all the ticket links. And of course, right now, if you're listening, you know that you're on partoftheproblem.com. For everybody else, when this episode comes out, if you want to get the episodes streaming live, uncensored, ad-free, you can always get them at partoftheproblem.com. Plus, the Thursday episode that is only for supporting listeners at partoftheproblem.com. That's the only place you can see it. And that is really us, I would say, at our most uncensored, because it's only going up for our site. No one could kick me off of my site except the guy who runs my site. He could kick me off, and then I would just have no idea how to get back on. But I pay him. I don't think he's going to do that. So anyway, make sure, if you can, come over and support us at partoftheproblem.com. And thank you to everybody who already who is watching live right now. All right. So let's start off with something kind of weird. You know what's kind of weird, Rob? And I guess, look, weird is one of those terms that it's kind of in the eye of the beholder, right? Like, you might think something's really weird, someone else thinks it's totally normal. Someone might think something's totally normal, and you're like, no, that's weird. What I think is weird is the way every single person in corporate media says the exact same thing all the time about every single subject. I personally find that to be kind of weird. Let's go to this montage, which is going super viral. I know Elon Musk shared this, and I think Rogan shared it as well. So people have been talking about this, but it really is pretty amazing. Let's take a look at the clip.
Some of what he and his running mate are saying, well, it's just plain weird.
These guys are just weird. That's where they are.
As weird and creepy as J.D. Vance.
Super weird idea from J.D. Vance.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, it's quite weird. They're just plain weird.
Just plain weird.
Just plain weird.
That stuff is weird. They come across weird, and then they start being weird. Yeah, they're weird.
Being a really weird.
He's such a weirdo.
Donald Trump and his weirdo running mate are weird. Deeply and profoundly weird.
They are weird.
These Republicans just being weird. It's just weird. It's really weird.
Republican weirdness goes even deeper.
He said a lot of things that are weird, a weird style that he brings, weird policies. Let's start with the weird thing, because it is a thing.
Just plain weird.
What was weird was talking about Diet Mountain Dew. Who drinks Diet Mountain Dew?
You ever seen the guy laugh? That seems very weird to me that an adult can go through 6.5 years of being in the public eye. If he has laughed, it's at someone, not with someone. That is weird behavior.
Weird and cultish.
These are weird people on the other side.
He kind of doubled down on his weird ideas.
I think weird is probably generous.
Simply weird. These guys are just plain weird.
Vance as weird?
You know, as the campaign said, weird.
It really is just plain weird.
JD Vance, plain weird.
I mean, I don't know how else you could read it.
Weird. It is kind of weird.
We're not afraid of weird people.
The other side, they're just weird.
Why are you being so weird? Vance has done something more extreme, more weird.
No matter what kind of weird stuff they keep saying.
Trump and Vance are just weird, in addition to being dangerous to democracy.
That's the weird part that's the most engaging.
Whom he addressed as my beautiful Christians, which was super weird.
Weird tech bro, JD Vance.
He's a weird guy.
JD Vance, uneasy and sort of weird.
Frankly, for lack of a better word, that he's weird.
Sarcastic remarks that aren't even funny, and he kind of shows that he can't really deliver a one-liner.
So, Sam, weird is the word here in terms of initial impressions from Vance.
Weird is the word. It sure is. All right. So first of all, there's a lot actually to this. It's a kind of fascinating thing. Number one, I would just say that this is how the corporate media works and has always worked. That I've talked about many times, the message discipline is always a huge part of their dominance. Historically, this would they're still doing it, and I think it still works to some extent. Historically, it worked much more. And what happens is that if when you hear it like that, even if you were somebody who watched a fair amount of news, if it's not put in a montage like that, it's kind of difficult to pick out that everybody is using the exact same phraseology. You know what I mean? And it does have this, this is true, a kind of, even though it seems very shallow and simple, it is a deep understanding of psychological warfare, of propaganda, that you just kind of say the same thing over and over again in a very subtle way until the viewer almost feels like they organically thought of it in their head. You know what I mean? You're like, oh yeah, that guy is kind of weird. Where did that even come from? It's just kind of been placed in my head. But what's fascinating now is that you have the internet. And so these montages come out, and then it totally exposes that you're like, oh, you guys got marching orders. It is not mathematically, the odds are impossible that every single one of these people within the same 2-day period all decided to use the exact same phrase. Ivermectin, for example, is used for if you look it up, Rob, a few hundred different purposes across a few hundred different species. Yet everyone said horse dewormer. That's not the only use of ivermectin. Yet everyone picked that one. And then you realize it's oh yeah, no, the orders are kind of given. The talking points are assigned. Anyway, as many people have already picked up on, part of what's so funny about the Democrats jumping on weird, which look, I'm going to say something for the record here. I do think JD Vance is a little bit weird. There's something a little bit weird about that guy. But you guys have decided to be the party of freaks. So you can't really use the word weird anymore. Joe Biden's got dudes in dresses in the White House. Several of them, you don't get to call other people weird. You can either say that the opening to the Olympics was awesome, or you can say JD Vance is weird. But you can't I'm sorry, I can't listen to a man breastfeeding his baby going, that guy's a little weird. Just too much for me.
If we're celebrating diversity, isn't it against your entire culture to call someone out for being weird? That means that they're different. That should be highlighted. If anything, you guys should be celebrating how weird JD Vance is, who, by the way, is very weird. And I'm a little bit surprised by the pick because he's strikingly. Firstly, Kamala's weirder. The way that she laughs, that's plenty weird.
That's pretty weird.
But in this case, I think even on Run Your Mouth, I call JD Vance weird. Like usually when you see these montages, it's something I don't agree with. And obviously, as you said, this is an example where they found something and they're like, all right, let's keep repeating it so that everyone's aware of it. This is one of the few instances where it's going to be sticky and it will stick because Vance is a weirdo.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's right. It might be someone, although I will say the other aspect to it is that on the internet, they are just getting destroyed because it's constantly like, oh, you think that's weird? Well, here's what you guys are. You know what I mean? Like, and then just like some picture of the weirdest woke shit that Democrats have been pushing. So that's where I think this actually might backfire. It will be effective on some people, I'm sure. All right, guys, let's take a moment and thank our sponsor for today's show, which is My Patriot Supply. As we've all learned over the last few years, the government can violate your rights, even your right to protect your family, and they think they can force their delusions onto your children. They think they can control the media and hide the truth, and to some degree they can. But what you can still have is self-reliance and peace of mind. Do you have water filtration? You should. A charged solar generator? You better. Emergency food on your shelves? Get that right now from My Patriot Supply. Having served millions of American families, My Patriot Supply is the most trusted name in survival, and for a darn good reason, too. Go to preparewithsmith.com right now, and you'll save $200 off their best-selling 3-month energy food kits. They will not have the price this low again, so go to preparewithsmith.com right now. These food kits deliver over 2,000 calories per day, sealed inside practically unpierceable packaging. They last up to 25 years in storage, and they're delicious. So go check it out right now at my site, preparewithsmith.com. You'll save $200 per kit, plus free shipping included. Preparewithsmith.com. All right, let's get back into the show. You know, for people who know, like I used to do a lot of shows on Fox News. There's a mix of several factors. So like when I first got on TV, it was Kennedy was the first one, and Red Eye, when Tom Shalhoub was the host over there. Technically, Tom Shalhoub booked me first, but Kennedy put me on TV first. Like Red Eye was like booked me, but it was like 3 weeks out, and then I was like, oh, I'm going to be on TV for the first time, and then like 2 days later, Kennedy like booked me on her show, and then I became like a regular on both of those shows, and then Greg Gutfeld had his show, and he started using me, so I do those shows, and then then I started doing like random other shows on Fox News here or there, but for many years that was like I became like a regular, like I was on every week on Red Eye and every week on Kennedy. And that was, then I got the contract at CNN, and then I wasn't allowed to do Fox News anymore while I was getting checks from Turner. And then when they didn't, for some reason, they didn't re-sign my contract. And then I started going back there. And anyway, Red Eye ended up getting canceled. Then they canceled Kennedy's show. I should go back and do Greg Gutfeld's show again, but things just kind of changed to like, I don't live in the city anymore. And, Greg Gutfeld does have a huge audience, but it's not kind of like what it used to be when I didn't have a following or any audience. And so it was like, oh yeah, you got to get on whenever you can. Whereas now it's just, all the big shows are like doing Piers Morgan or something like that is like way bigger than most things on cable news. Excuse me. Anyway, I met, so like what it always used to be, almost always the format was that they have what their title will usually be a Democratic strategist or Republican strategist or something like that. But they got these people who just like do TV hits all day long. Like they work as a contributor for Fox News. And you'll just see them. They'll be a guest on 9 shows in a day. They'll come in and just do panels all day long. That was never me. I would just come on and do like a show. I was a contributor for SE Cup, but I was never at Fox. But so anyway, so I met. If you ever watch the shows, Rob, I'm sure you've seen some of the panels that I've been on. It'd always just be like, okay, a Democrat giving their talking points, and then a Republican giving their talking points, and then me just like destroying them. because and not because like I'm so great, just because like they speak in talking points and I don't, and I just be talking, like making a point. So there was this woman, I want to say her name was Julie. I can't remember her name, but anyway, she was a Democratic strategist, and I did a whole bunch of panels with her while she was there, and she would always just, it was always talking points, and then she got one of her emails got leaked in one of the WikiLeaks dumps, and I believe it was her. She was emailing Donna Brazile, who at the time was the head of the DNC, and she was kind of like complaining that she wasn't moving up the ranks more, and she says in her thing, she was like, I'm out here on Fox News pushing all of our talking points. Yikes. And I remember it's like I saw her after that came out, and I kind of I forget exactly how I brought it up, but I kind of brought it up, like without being like aggressive about it. But and she told me straight up that she goes, every morning they get their email with like, this is the talking points. It'll be, and that's what they're about. They're about message discipline, particularly the Democrats. I'm sure it's true with Republicans too. This was the only like personal example where I confirmed it with somebody who was like, it's like, I saw her email of what she was saying. And then she was like, yeah. And so every morning, it would be whatever it is, whether it's, something like the Republicans want to take away reproductive rights for women. That's what we're stressing today, And so clearly this is what it is. Like the email blast went out and it was like, we're saying JD Vance is weird. That's what we're doing here. And then you watch everybody just like in unison, all of them say the exact same thing. So if, when you see examples like this, that's what it is. It's that they all get marching orders on what to say. And, I've made this point a lot of times and in a lot of different capacities. And I really do think that for people like me and you, Rob, and I'd imagine for the people who listen to this show, like, I think if you listen to this show, the only reason you would enjoy listening to this show is if at least in this way you were like me and Rob. And it's like, you can't stress enough how much sometimes there are other people who seemingly on the surface are kind of doing the same thing we're doing, right? Like they might be on a show and talking about politics, but it's like, no, they're playing a different game than you're playing. Like because you just like, what's mind boggling to me is I just couldn't imagine like ever if I was going on a show over the years between, cable news shows and podcasts. I've just done so many shows. Like this is what I do for a living, just do shows, and I could never imagine going into one of them and somebody being like, here's what you're saying today. You know what I mean?
I would love it. You just be a drunk. You just hand me a piece of paper. Just hit these lines and you're off the hook. You don't have to do any work. You don't have to think. You don't have to do anything. It
would make your life slightly easier, Rob. But, it also, you know what I'm saying? Like the idea of just being like, could you imagine like if I was ever just like, hey, Rob, we're going to like talk about this like economic forecast today. Here's your opinion on it. You know what I mean? Like, well, you should right away be like, wait, what? But you tell me my opinion? That's not how that works. It's just like, it's just people are, I've talked about this too. It's true even with people like in the online debate world where sometimes it's like, oh, like you're not playing the same game. You're like doing something else. You're just trying to grow your audience, or you're just grifting, or you're just whatever it is. It's like, you're not doing the same thing. And I think for most, I would think basically everybody who listens to this show knows what I mean, and that you can kind of smell that out. Like, I know we have a lot of people who listen to this show who don't agree with us on a lot of things. I mean, I'm sure they agree with us on some things, but there's a lot of people who are like, oh, have areas of disagreement. I think one of the reasons why people like us enjoy shows like this is because they know we're not playing that game. We're a couple of guys who are like telling you how we feel, and we mean it sincerely. And there's no other ulterior motive in it. But just so you know, like these guys in the corporate press, it's permeated by people who are doing that. And then you wonder almost in a way where it's like, wait a minute, how were you so worried about COVID yesterday, but you're for massive protests today? And you're like, oh, because they got a different email. That's what happened. That it's as simple as that. And they will actually completely contradict the thing that they were passionately telling you they believed last week, this week, if the email changes. That's what you're seeing here.
I agree with everything you just said. In slight defense of JD Vance, he does come off like a weirdo, and it's almost strange to me that the powers that be aren't better at, like Obama was naturally and clearly charismatic, or I think Ronald Reagan had a line where he said, in this day and age, and that's already, 30 years ago or whatever. I'm not good with math, nor do I know our
40.
history. 40 years ago, I think he said, I don't know how anyone could do this job if they weren't an actor. So I think he has some line like that. So it's almost strange that they ever pick people that aren't smooth on television, because that's clearly a part of the job.
Well, clearly look at Trump. I mean, that was a huge, that was his background, and that's huge. Yeah.
However, if you were to, I mean, it won't happen, but if JD Vance was in a debate with Kamala Harris, I think he would destroy her. I think he's a sharp guy, and there's a chance he'll demolish whoever they put in a VP debate with him. He's clearly got some winning tricks up his sleeve, that he wrote a winning book, so he understands media. I mean, that's what buried that lady's career when she put out they leaked the early drafts where she thought it was
South Dakota Kristi Noem.
She thought it was persuasive to talk about killing dogs, and clearly that wasn't. So and his book was so good they even turned it into a Ron Howard Netflix film. So
by the way, I like my conspiracy spidey senses went off on that, and someone corrected me, so I should correct the record on this, where I was like, because Kristi Noem, say whatever you will about her, she was the only governor in the United States of America, the only one who never had lockdowns and never had a mask mandate. Like, there just were no mandates in South Dakota. And I know she's bad on some other issues. And I don't know that much about her. And I'm sure she's bad on a lot of issues, but there was something about that where I was, particularly during those years, where I was like, well, she kind of gets a pass from me now, because there's nothing more important. If you were a governor in 2020, 2021, and 22, there simply was nothing more important than that. It's like the president when it comes to war. Like, you're the commander in chief. You actually just get to decide what the policy is or how the policy is implemented. And, if you care about, this whole liberty thing that we're fans of, that was the most important thing affecting people's liberty. And so when this book came out, I was kind of like, oh, was this like almost like a hit job to get the one governor who didn't do lockdowns, in trouble? Because none of these people write their own books. None of these stories are real stories. So you're like, oh, did they just put that in there? And she knew. But then someone did correct me on Twitter that she's reading the audiobook. So
you're not.
She knew they were saying that, and she took it as her own. Like, she said the words, and you're like, yeah, turns out shooting your dog isn't what small town people are really into.
Yeah, she was just trying to be one of the guys and tell you that she don't think because she's a lady she can't make tough decisions. And the point I was making, I
think you're right about that. Yeah,
it was a persuasive mistake. And so in this world, while JD Vance does not have the natural charisma of an Obama, he is a smart guy. He's new to the upper leagues of this. It's kind of like when a quarterback, first steps into the NFL. Sometimes it takes them a little bit to get their footing. So, I mean, we can trash him for being weird. Thus far, he's come off as unsmooth and like a bit of a liability to the campaign, because he just doesn't have that smoothness of TV stars. However, he did get there by writing a book that was so good that it got turned into a movie. So I wouldn't count him out.
Have you read the book or seen the movie?
No, I could care less about either.
Yeah, no, me neither. I haven't. Just
especially, by the way,
I was curious. I don't know.
The preview for the Ron Howard movie, it's almost funny to watch with the overacting in it, and just like how Hollywood sappy it is. It's almost like it almost feels like you're watching a spoof of something.
I watched the trailer for the movie, and I could have been more like, not for me.
Yeah,
it's just not the type of movie I would want to watch. By the way, speaking of JD Vance, let's go to this clip, which I had commented on Twitter, but this was going super viral. And I thought it was kind of interesting. And it's a good conversation starter in a sense. But anyway, let's play this JD Vance clip. By the way, before you even play it, Brian, pretty weird choice of outfit for someone running for vice president. Even a weird outfit just for a guy who's a senator. It's like, maybe throw on a shirt and tie. I don't know. I'm not a suit and tie kind of guy myself, but I'm also not a senator who's running for president or vice president. So it's just kind of like, I'm just saying, if you're trying to combat the whole weird thing, wearing a t-shirt over another t-shirt, probably not the best thing to go on the Charlie Kirk show doing. But anyway, let's play the clip.
I'll go back to something I said earlier about we need to reward the things that we think are good and punish the things that we think are bad. So you talk about tax policy. Let's tax the things that are bad and not tax the things that are good. If you're making $100,000, $400,000 a year, and you've got 3 kids, you should pay a different, lower tax rate than if you're making the same amount of money and you don't have any kids. It's that simple.
I totally agree.
JD Vance making the argument that essentially, these are where the Republicans are at now, that we should use taxation for social engineering purposes, that we should tax the bad things and not tax the good things. Well, there's a few different points on this. Number one, even if that were true, if that was your starting point, that's your philosophy, that's the role of taxation, is to kind of incentivize the behavior we want out of citizens and disincentivize the behavior we don't want. Well, I mean, it would logically follow from that, I'd imagine, that you should be for abolishing the income tax, because working is good. I mean, unless you're going to argue that it's really, really bad that people have jobs, that's a bad thing that we got to put a stop to. Why would you're saying tax the bad things, not the good things? Well, I'd suggest working is a good thing. And so, okay, so then join us in being for abolishing the income tax. But aside from that, I would say for anybody who is agrees with JD Vance there, to please just consider the fact that, okay, a couple things. Now one, what's good and bad, much like we just said before with what's weird, is somewhat subjective. There are now I understand. I'm sure there's lots of things that we could all agree on that are good. I would have thought working was one of those, but there's lots of things that obviously, there are certain behaviors and certain lifestyles that we could all probably agree that is, broadly speaking, in the category of bad, and this one over here is broadly in the category of good. I'd like someone to be an upstanding citizen who helps their community. I don't want someone to be a heroin addict or something like that. But the problem is that there are also a lot of things that kind of fall into gray areas, or even areas that are prone to just be misdiagnosed as bad. I mean, for example, inheritance. Okay? You could pretty clearly make an argument for why, that guy, someone inheriting a whole bunch of money didn't work for it, they didn't earn it, they don't really have a right to, or something like that. You could see any statist making this type of argument. And yet at the same time, I think if you really think about that, there's probably no greater incentive for wealth creation than people wanting to pass it on to people they love. I'll say that is 100% my motivation in making money, is that I want to, I want to support my family, but that I want to have something to leave them. That's my motivation. And why the hell should anyone in DC, if I work for something and I wish to give it to my children, why should anyone in DC have a right to say I can't? The fundamental flaw in JD Vance's logic here is that you almost, and this is true with almost every single government policy, almost every one of it, that it's almost you just kind of they rely on you taking the vehicle for granted and not examining it at all. So it just becomes like, hey, the outcome we want. And it's like, yeah, but what tool are you using to get to that outcome? You know what I mean? Like, it's like, for example, when they talk about like the people who want to defend, this policy of fighting a proxy war in Ukraine against Russia, they'll always go like, well, what do you think? Russia should just be allowed to invade and nothing happens to them? You know, as if this all exists like in a vacuum and you have some magical tool that can make Russia not invade or can fight Russia off. Whereas instead you're like, no, we're talking about Washington, D.C. and NATO. Okay? That's the tool you're working with. Now let's examine them a little bit and what really motivates their policies. Because, you know, if you look at U.S. foreign policy, Rob, I'm not convinced it's motivated by humanitarian purposes. I'm not sure that that's the major driving force in our decisions about war. Likewise, if you just remove, you're like someone like JD Vance, like Mr. like small town America, like, you know, going to church and whatever, you know, he's talking about. It's like, well, so imagine you looked at our society, Rob, and I was to say to you, there's a group of people who I think get to decide what's good and what's bad. And you know what that group of people is, Rob? It's politicians in Washington, D.C. They're the most noble amongst us, after all. So I trust them to be the arbiters of what is good and bad and what could possibly go wrong with that. You know, you give politicians in D.C. the ability to decide what's good and what's bad. Buckle up. Because their values are probably not going to be the same as yours. All right, guys, let's take a moment and thank our sponsor for today's show, which is Moink. I love Moink. This is an incredible company. They deliver grass-fed and grass-finished beef, lamb, pastured pork, chicken, and sustainable wild-caught Alaskan salmon all straight to your door. Moink farmers farm like our grandparents did, and as a result, Moink meat tastes like it should because the family farm does it better. The Moink difference is a difference you can taste, and you can also feel good knowing you're helping family farms stay financially independent. You choose the meats delivered in every box. Choose from ribeyes, chicken breasts, pork chops, salmon fillets, and much more. Plus, you can cancel anytime. The meat is delicious. I love it. I'll tell you, I do not trust any of the meat in supermarkets. I don't even know what's going on with my local butchers, to be honest. But Moink, you know you're getting quality stuff. Definitely go check them out. Keep American farmers going by signing up at moinkbox.com/POTP right now. And listeners of this show get free bacon for a year. That's 1 year of the best bacon you'll ever taste, but for a limited time only. Go check it out right now, moinkbox.com/POTP. That's moinkbox.com/POTP. All right, let's get back into the show.
What's the childhood deduction on your taxes if you have a child? Because aren't there deductions for it?
You know, I probably should know the answer to this.
Well, let's just, I mean, and then you also get the benefit of if you choose to use public school, which I hope you don't, but if you choose to use public school, and in some districts, it's not the worst education, that's
right.
At least a value of $12,000 to $20,000 a year. So between the childhood deduction, schooling, and whatever other benefits you take from the government for your kids, it's not like there's nothing in the system for that already.
Yeah, no, that is.
I mean, it doesn't change what you were saying or his broader point, but
no, it's to some degree at least he's endorsing the current system. You know what I mean? Or the current system is endorsing his view. I mean, yeah, there's tax credits for children and stuff like that.
It seems it's so polar to his pitch, which was, hey, I was able to get out of the system is working against working middle class or lower class America. And what we need is the system to change so that people have an opportunity. And it's actually the benefits that the state is giving to people that's getting in the way of them getting ahead, that the welfare system has been bad. Right. So this is so the opposite, where he's just pitching a different version of wealth redistribution of what we need to do is create tax. And it's like, no, just get rid of inflation and get rid of all these government policies that are holding people back and preventing them from wanting to have kids or live better lives.
Yeah, I mean, look, the answer here is just cut taxes for people, man. Like, you don't have to sit here and like do this whole thing like, no, we're going to use the tax code to manipulate people to have the behavior we want them to have. I mean, like having kids is the best thing I've ever done. And I highly recommend it if you want to have kids. There are some people who probably shouldn't have kids. And, you're going to probably know that about yourself better than other people are going to know that about you. And the truth is that even if it's somebody who doesn't have kids, let's say they pay a higher tax rate or something like that. It's like, okay, so instead of them spending that money or investing that money, either if they're spending the money, they're spending it on services that they value, meaning that somebody who is producing services that other people value is going to get more profit. And if they're investing it in something that they deem to be something likely to pay off and pay them money. That's what you get if people get to keep more of their money. Or you can send it to the criminals in DC to hand out to political cronies. What's better for our society? Even the childless person, what's better for our society? It's very obvious. What would be better is if they paid less money to Washington, D.C. And guess what? Here's the great thing about that policy of reducing taxes. It also helps the people who have kids. You also lower their tax bill.
There's also something that doesn't add up in the logic because if people had more money, they might actually feel like they can afford kids and go out and have kids. So if you're taxing them at a higher rate before they have kids and you're just not, then like you were saying, you might just start incentivizing shitty people to have kids, people that wouldn't have done so. And then people that might have came to, oh, I can actually afford this and I would rather live that lifestyle. I'd rather actually, they have the confidence to go out and maybe find a wife and actually live that lifestyle. They might not get there. So what he would need to do is basically start punishing, I don't know, people women over the age of 40 and men maybe above the age of 50 if they chose not to have children. And then what are you going to do when they turn around to their retirement years just a couple years later, and now they're looking to the state for assistance for, Medicaid and everything else that they don't have. So just doesn't sound very well thought out, because who exactly are you going to be incentivizing? If I'm a 30-year-old and I'm not making a lot of money and you're still taxing me at full rates, I might not envision a life where I can afford kids. And I'm probably not sitting down to go, oh, but there's this tax benefit that will come my way and maybe I actually could. It just seems doesn't seem very well thought out.
No, well, look, it's like, because like there's some logic to it, but then the thing is that if you really accept the idea that people respond to incentives, and so let's reward good behavior and punish bad behavior. It's like, okay, well, what actually prevents people from having a family? Let's say like people who should have a family and want to have a family but can't. It's like, well, maybe the fact that the price of everything is astronomical. Maybe the fact that if somebody has a job where they make, I don't know what the average salary in America is. I think it's somewhere between like 50 and 60 grand a year. But if somebody makes the average salary, that because of the price of housing and healthcare and education and all of these things that people really you need, like the things you'd need, it becomes more and more out of your reach. And so, hey, let's not have a policy of making everything so goddamn expensive. And what does that? Well, printing money. That's what okay, so then come out against printing money. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, if you really want to go down this path, actually get at the heart, actually get at the root of it. And there's a million things that the government does that look every inch of even what you were talking about. It's like, look what Social Security totally undermined the whole pre-existing structure of what people would do in their old age, which was rely on their family. The idea was always that you'd have little kids, you take care of them when they're young and they're helpless, and then when you get older and you're helpless, you have your kids who take care of you. But now the government's coming in and doing that. So it's like at every inch, this existing system just has perverse incentives. And so, like, if you want to be smart about this and actually do something that might actually make a difference, then what you should be arguing for is a drastic reduction in spending, in taxation overall, a drastic reduction in regulations, You know what I mean? What does that do? What's the incentives of regulations? Is the incentives to start a business or not start a business? Have we decided, is that a good thing? JD Vance started a business. Is it a good thing to start a business? Okay, so let's not disincentivize the good things, right? Isn't that your logic? I mean, essentially, this is just going to take you toward radical libertarianism if you follow with any intelligence, if you follow this logical train of thought. Okay, let's switch topics here. We should talk about what's going on with Israel right now, because this is a very dangerous situation. Israel just bombed Beirut in Lebanon. There was a strike in the Golan Heights recently, and a bunch of kids died. It's truly awful. Israel and the United States of America is claiming that Hezbollah was responsible for the attack. Hezbollah has denied that they are responsible for the attack. I don't know. I don't know that any of us know what the truth is of that. It certainly is plausible that Hezbollah could have done it, but I guess we don't know for sure. But we do know that Israel, in response to that, has now started bombing Lebanon. And this is one of the fears that, a lot of us have had since the war started, that there is this danger of this spreading and becoming a wider regional conflict. This is a major step toward that. To be clear, just for people who know, Hezbollah is, they don't have the military strength of Israel, but you're talking about a much more formidable opponent than Hamas. I mean, Hezbollah is, they are the political faction that controls southern Lebanon. They're a legit military. I mean, they're not just, they started as kind of like militias. They basically started in the 80s when Israel invaded and occupied Lebanon, and they were the resistance fighters. But they've become a legitimate military at this point. I think most experts put them around like a mid-sized military. And they're not pushovers. Like, they drove Israel out of Lebanon. And you know what I mean? Like, and at least it seems like they have some ability to touch Israel itself. If they are responsible for this strike, then they just proved that. And so Israel, who's already having a lot of trouble with the current war that they're fighting, is now looking like they're spreading the war further. And of course, the U.S., as is with everything Israel does, is very implicated and very involved in this. And if you care about America, and that's your primary concern, my God, like another just disastrous war in the Middle East. Isn't that really what we need right now, Rob?
Certainly doesn't seem to be good escalations.
Yeah, that's for sure. All right, guys, let's take a moment and thank our sponsor for today's show, which is Monetary Metals, a phenomenal company. And right now, you can unlock a 12% return on silver. If you're ready to start building wealth by putting your precious metals to work, you got to check out Monetary Metals. Now, of course, silver is not just a precious metal. It's a tangible asset and a great way to diversify any investment portfolio. But with Monetary Metals, you don't just own physical silver. You own silver that works for you to generate more silver, growing your total ounces over time. Right now, you can earn 12% annual interest on silver paid in silver in their latest offering if you're an accredited investor. Click the link in the episode description or head over to monetary-metals.com. Monetary Metals is revolutionizing the way you invest in gold and silver. They've been paying interest in silver and gold for over 8 years, helping you grow your wealth in real tangible assets. Finally, there's a true alternative to saving in dollars, a yield on gold and silver. This is the first true silver bond since 1834. You can earn 12% annual interest on silver paid in silver. You must be an accredited investor to participate. It's a 3-year term. The bond is financing a publicly traded mining company located in the Western United States. Again, click the link in the episode description or just go to monetary-metals.com for more information on how to participate. All right, let's get back into the show. Now, by the way, and let me tell you, I know I was talking about this a little bit on the last episode, the live one we did down in Nashville, but it is like every time it's almost like the Democrats and the corporate media will push you closer and closer to just want to support Donald Trump. You know what I mean? Like they're just all so awful. They deserve to lose so much that at a certain point you're almost like, fuck it, man. Maybe I should just support Donald Trump. But then Donald Trump always comes in, and you're like, oh, okay, oh yeah, that's right. Anyway, let's play this. Here's Donald Trump from I think this was earlier today. Let's play the clip.
Any Jewish person that voted for her or him or whoever it's going to be, I assume it's going to be her. Anybody that did that should have their head examined. If you love Israel, or if you're Jewish, because a lot of Jewish people do not like Israel, and they happen to be in New York. You know that.
Yes.
But if you are Jewish, regardless of Israel, if you're Jewish, if you vote for a Democrat, you're a fool, an absolute fool. They have let Jewish people down since Obama at levels that nobody could believe possible. 15 years ago, the strongest lobby in all of Washington was Israel. It was by far the strongest lobby. Nobody would say anything bad about Israel. Today, it's like nobody says anything good, except Republicans, by the way. Nobody says anything good about it. So it's a hell of a change. I assume you know exactly what I'm saying.
Oh, I know.
15 years ago, you couldn't say a bad thing.
No.
You'd be out of office.
Yeah.
And today, it's almost like, Schumer has become a Palestinian. Chuck Schumer is officially now a Palestinian.
It's funny, but it's true. It's sad. He is. And they tell me that this Harris's husband, Doug Emhoff, Mr. President, is Jewish. He's Jewish like Bernie Sanders is Jewish. Are you kidding me? He's a crappy Jew. Yeah. He's a horrible Jew.
Well, there you go. Don't worry. It's like at least on Ukraine, like Donald Trump had some pretty good rhetoric. It's gotten worse, but he did have some really good rhetoric about like ending the war immediately. And he doesn't care. He just wants the dying to stop. He just wants to end it. And of course you sit there and you go, all right, he's saying the right thing, but who knows if he's actually going to do it once he gets in office. You know what I mean? But on this he's just telling you, I'm going to be terrible. That's the thing. Chuck Schumer is a Palestinian and the guy laughs. It's funny because it's true. No, it's fucking not. It's not true. And we're to sit here and pretend that the political party who's in power right now, who's funding, what the ICJ calls a plausible genocide. Whatever you want to call it, they're funding and arming Israel's current war. Those are all a bunch of Palestinians, Rob. Do you understand that? Those are all the pro-Palestinian guys. Like how it is unbelievable that no matter what war hawks the Democrats are, the Republicans always circle back to this thing. Like we're supposed to pretend that they're like these hippies in 1968 or something like that. Like, oh yeah, if I get in there, we'll really support Israel. And by the way, Trump's just such a fucking idiot. But like this idea that all Jewish people have to be on board with this. Like if you're Jewish, then you have to be like, yes, go start a war with Lebanon. Why? Why would your religion mean that you have to be on the side of them? It really is crazy. It's the same logic as being like, well, then every black person should vote for Kamala Harris, right? Because you're for the blacks, right? So if you're Jewish, you got to support Trump because he's for Israel. God, it's just awful.
I thought he had a winning hand, and I'm surprised that Donald Trump didn't play it, which was throw Netanyahu under the bus. Say, I love the country of Israel, I love the Jewish people, but what Netanyahu did is disgusting. You can use Donald Trump language. He's endangered his entire country. If someone else was there and I was president, this never would have happened. I know how to move forward and make sure that the Palestinians are not invading Israel, but are able to live better. Or what, you can spin it however you want, but you've got an easy pathway out of this situation, which is to blame Netanyahu, which, by the way, politically, you should be strong enough to get away with. He was the guy who backed Joe Biden when you were saying that it wasn't a legitimate election.
Yeah.
So what exactly do the Israelis and Netanyahu have on everybody across the board that even not as president and just running, and after Netanyahu had trashed Trump, he has got to invite him into his home and go, you've never eaten a meal like this. You're going to love what we have for you here. And then being on the news, and, he's lying a little bit with they got to get it over. He's, by the way, inhumane comment of the Israelis have to wrap this up quickly because they're getting bad publicity. It's not a statement about the morality of what's happening or whether or not it's good foreign policy. It's solely a statement on, hey, the press on this is bad, so they better stop doing it.
Yeah, and get it over quickly kind of implies like ramp it up. You know what I mean? Like really get in there and do it. Yeah, it's just terrible. And for Donald Trump to be taking this line, it does, as much as the Democrats deserve to lose this election so much, it does just, it kills any energy that I had of being like, maybe I'll just support this guy, to be like, screw you.
He had another winning hand, even though it's not necessarily true. He could step up there and go, the problem is the U.S. looks weak because of what's going on in Ukraine. And we look weak because of what Obama and Biden did in dealing with Iran and giving funds to Iran. And this is all because of the power imbalance in the region, because of the strategic mistakes we've made, and because of the weakness that we have. But once I'm in president, the United States is going to be so respected, people like the Palestinians won't do that, which at least wouldn't be an endorsement of Netanyahu and the current strategy.
Yeah.
But instead, he's just signaling, hey, whatever check you guys need, you got my back. I'm the same as everybody else on this one.
But even like he just goes out of his way to demonstrate that like he doesn't get it at all. It just doesn't get where it's like AIPAC is such a powerful lobby. 15 years ago, you couldn't even criticize Israel. Now people are criticizing Israel, and you're like, wait, what? That's your America first. You're the America first guy, and your perspective is that a lobbying on behalf of a foreign government once had so much control that you couldn't even criticize this foreign nation, and that's what you want to go back to? By the way, it's all the wars that you claim you were against, all the wars that you say were such a bad mistake, the things you sat there and you were like, oh, remember you told Jeb Bush that his brother lied us into the war in Iraq? Well, guess who supported that? Israel. They were one of the major forces. I mean, it's like, who do you think the neocons are? Do you know? Do you even know? Because I don't think he does. Jeb Bush, your brother lied us into war. Well, who was your brother's administration? Who was Dick Cheney and Paul and Wolfowitz and Richard Pearl and David Wormser? Who were all these guys? Who were they working on behalf of? Whose team were they on? Oh yeah, the people you're not allowed to criticize. The Likud party, okay? So like, it's just, again, he just doesn't know anything. It's so frustrating because he's like the one guy who's positioned to be the guy, and he just doesn't know anything. And he's just too stupid and lazy, man. So like he doesn't even want to know. He doesn't even want to like put in a little bit of the work to kind of figure it out. And again, Rob, like you said, you could even though this isn't completely fair or accurate, but you could isolate it to Netanyahu, because Netanyahu's the longest serving prime minister in Israeli history. And he's been in there. So he was in there first in 96 and, he was out for a little and came back in. But he's the guy who was pushing for the war in Iraq. Like you could play off that. And the fact that the guy, Benjamin Netanyahu, who was pushing for America to topple Saddam's regime in Iraq, was pushing for America to have a regime change in Iran, was pushing for America to have regime change in Libya, in Syria. That guy also, when you were contesting the election, after you had done everything for him, bent over backward, you know, Abraham Accords, moving the embassy to Tel Aviv, moving the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. You did everything. And while you were contesting the election, not after he lost the court cases, before any of the court cases, when he was contesting the election, it was either the day or 2 days after, he came out and congratulated Obama. So here you have it. You have your hand, like as you said, your hand is perfectly given to you.
This war,
huh?
He congratulated Biden.
I'm sorry. Yes, that's right. Came out and congratulated Biden while Trump was still contesting the election, you know? And so you could at least just throw that guy under the bus. By the way, that guy who is deeply unpopular in his own country. And the war is deeply unpopular in the world. You know, like, why not be on the popular side of this issue? And, you know, it's a mix of the fact that there's, you know, it might be popular amongst the American people, but it ain't popular amongst the powerful.
I'll tell you one more lie he could go with, which would probably be the best one, is I'm here because I'm the America First person. And we've got problems in this country, and that's why I'm running. I got a border to fix. I've got it. Well, he should say the deficit, but he doesn't care about that. He could say inflation. He could say I got inflation to fix. I've got a Ukraine-Putin problem to fix. And we're going to make sure that you just lie. We're going to make sure that everyone's safe over there. Do what you do. I know how to fix it. I'm going to get it solved. Everyone needs to be safe. What's happening over there is tragic, and I've got a better way to approach it. Even that's different than just giving a blanket endorsement and going, hey, deep state and Jewish people, whatever you need, I'll sign those checks also.
And then this thing of like, you know, the kind of weaponizing identity stuff I just hate so much too. Like, oh, you're not a real Jew. And if you're a Jew, you're a fool to not support this. It's like, okay, well, I'm Jewish and you saying this makes me never want to consider supporting you. So take that for what it is. All right, let's check in with the live chat over at partoftheproblem.com. That's one of the cool things about signing up at partoftheproblem.com. You get to be in the live chat. Okay.
And once more, porchtour.com this weekend out in California. 3 shows with Brian McWilliams. Come hang out.
Oh, nice. Yeah. I forgot you're doing them with Brian. That's awesome. Okay. Eve says, hold on, let me just make that a little bigger here. IDF soldiers are being prosecuted for torture and sexually assaulting Palestinian prisoners, but we're going all in on their side. This is not a good look and will not age well. Yeah, did you see that, Rob? There's like there were like protests about the guy being prosecuted for raping a Palestinian. It's pretty appalling. Look, dude, look, it's hard to say this in any other way. And I don't even want to be unfair where, you know, I'm not saying there aren't any good people in Israel. There are. I'm not saying they're not, like, you know, the reasonably by world standards, like fairly good to their own people. But the dynamic that you always come back to, and I've said this a bunch in almost every debate that I do, what it comes down to is just the only way you can really defend Israel is if you simply value Israeli life and don't value Arab life. That's what it all comes down to. And look, you can see this the other day. When there was this strike that killed, like, what was it? It was like 11 or 12 kids got killed at a soccer game in the Golan Heights there, Rob. And I mean, look, like, and rightfully so, totally understandably, like, it's like all of the people who are supporting Israel are just like appalled. And they're like, look how horrible this is, you know? It's like, look at this. I mean, I can't tell you how many people got blown up on Twitter because, you know, I've been one of the more vocal people criticizing Israel, and they're like, oh, look at this, Dave. Look at what you say. Oh, okay. So are you still, you know, pro Hamas and Hezbollah after this? Even though obviously I'm not pro either of those groups. Unlike them, I don't actually support the killing of kids. But you just sit there and you're like, yeah, but look, isn't this the whole game? Without even realizing it, you're admitting the whole thing right now, right? Because you're sitting here and going like, look how appalling this is. Like my stomach is sick over this. And you're like, yeah, and you should be appalled. That is horrible and totally inexcusable. But how are you going to sit here and say, a dozen kids died in Israel. Isn't this an outrage? Well, you don't care at all that thousands and thousands and thousands of kids in Gaza have died over the last 9 months. You know what I mean? Like, it's right there. It's explained. And the truth is that not just in the Israeli government, but in Israel in general, there is like, it's almost something akin to the culture in the South in 1840 and the way they looked at black people. Like, those people just don't deserve anything. They're not even really people. They have no rights, period. Fuck them. They get nothing. That's kind of the attitude. And you can't have that. You can't support that. You can't have that attitude. It's just too evil. And I know, Rob, like, I know you've seen some of that stuff before where it's like, and look, I also do get that it's like people get very hardened, especially when there's groups of people who have been fighting back and forth and killing back and forth for a long period of time. But there is an attitude amongst a lot of Israelis that it's just like, yep, got to show those people what's up. That's that. We dominate and they submit. And that's the way this is supposed to work. And that's the attitude you see on display. And is when you see a guy who clearly raped a Palestinian and they're protesting the fact that he would get prosecuted for that, what else is that, dude? What else are we looking at here?
Yeah, I think you don't get, I don't know, you don't get moral passes like that. God did not take you in to conquer the current Arab population with pillars of smoke and with the clear directive and miracles. So I don't know why you guys think you get a moral pass. And that's what's so beautiful about being a libertarian with the non-aggression principle. You guys should be stand for moral standards. That gives you the high ground. If you stand for moral standards, you get the high ground. If you stand for, hey, we can do whatever we want to other people because we're us and they're them, well then, I mean, how is that philosophy any different than extremist terrorism from them when they kill civilians on the basis that they got a directive from however they frame it religiously?
Yeah, no, that's right. That's right. It's the exact same thing, and it's just unacceptable all around. All right, let's see what else we got going on in the live stream. Andy the ANCAP said Dave is a Palestinian. I don't know why that's making me laugh. Yeah, by the way, everything is seems to be going off real well with this live stream. I apologize. I know we had a little bit of an issue with the last one, but overall for a new site launching, I think we've been doing pretty good. McFalcon writes, Google redirecting Trump's assassination to the Reagan attempts. Tech is gross. You know, I have not, I don't know if you have, I have not messed around with this at all myself, but I did see Elon Musk tweeted something about like what the shadiness Google's up to. Did you see any of this, Rob? Where it's like, if you search like assassination of T and then like just let it pre-fill, it's like Reagan. You're like, Reagan doesn't start with a T. Like, why are we getting like, there are just things where like, if you like search Trump, like the first big news stories that come up are all like Kamala Harris puff pieces and stuff like that. And it is, you know, it's interesting that particularly when the cover story for all the tech censorship was like election interference, you know, like misinformation is, you know, interfering in our elections or whatever. And you just realize like the whole game here is like, you know, putting your thumb on the scale. It is pretty crazy, like how much power a company like Google has to just move the needle a little bit. And all they got to do is bury one thing. You know, if you remember back in 2019 when Tulsi Gabbard was running for president. So Tulsi Gabbard, after the first debate, or it was after like a few debates, I think almost every one she was in, she was the most Googled person in America. Because, you know, she was the only one saying anything interesting up there. So a lot of people were like, hey, who the hell is that lady? Let's go check her out. And so after the first debate, she was the most Googled, candidate afterward. And then after the second debate, they just took away the ad that redirects you to her website. You know, like they had the SEO stuff figured out that the top thing, if you just Google Tulsi Gabbard, would be her campaign website. And they just took that off, you know? And it's interesting how there's little things like that you really, it's hard to like exactly put a value on, but once that moment's gone, it's gone. You know what I mean? Like that was her chance. That's her chance to like have a net and catch new people. You have the big debate. That's when the most eyeballs are on you. That's when people go to Google to search you, and then they get your campaign site. Then there's information to donate. Then there's your policies. You get say, and you just take that away, and then you don't get any of that. And it is obviously Google's a company who's very in bed with the government and the establishment. And yeah, I mean, there's no question that that's one of the many things that Trump's going to have to overcome. So already, it's like, I don't know, and I don't know that anyone knows, but I don't know exactly how many points that's worth. You know what I mean? How many votes that's worth. But whatever it is, let's say it's worth 5%. Well, now your starting point is you got to win by 6%. Like whatever whatever Google's moving the needle is, you're already in a deficit and you got to overcome that. So it's at least, though, much like with the weird compilation that we started the show with, at least it is cool that now you got Elon Musk tweeting that out and everyone kind of sees that there's at least some mechanism to open people's eyes to it or fight back or something like that. But anyway, all right, we got to any final thoughts, Rob, or we got to wrap this one up?
We got it. We got a lot stacked for the next episode. Wild News Week.
There's a ton going on, so we got a lot more to talk to you guys about. But I'll see you guys out there in Orlando this Friday for Young Americans for Liberty. Of course, go to porchtour.com to come see Rob, comicdavesmith.com, and come right over here to partoftheproblem.com. Oh, and also we just started a new YouTube channel for Dave Smith Clips. We will put that link in the episode description. We're starting this channel from scratch, so please do me a favor and go over there and subscribe to that YouTube channel as well. Subscribe, to both of them, obviously. And yeah, we're going to be putting a whole bunch of good content up there. It'll be clips from this show. There'll even be clips from the members only Thursday episodes. So you can maybe get a little taste of that. But for the whole thing, you got to go sign up. But it'll be clips from stuff that other stuff that I've done. Brian just put the my talk at the Bitcoin conference up there. If you want to go check that out, you can go check it out there at the Clips channel. That link will be in the episode description. All right, thank you guys so much. Catch you next time. Peace.